Hey, how's it going?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good. It's Halloween over here. Do you have Halloween there?
It's sort of, it's more and more. In fact, I bet the doorbell will go because obviously it's early evening here. And if the doorbell goes, just if you can hear it,
It'll be
tell
those
me.
damn kids wanting
I'm
candy.
gonna ignore him. I didn't sign this contract. Trick or treat? No, neither.
Uh-huh.
No.
Is it an American import? I mean, I thought this was a
Yes.
European
Well,
tradition that,
the pagans started it,
yeah,
but the Americans invented the candy on the doorstep.
okay.
But yeah, we do. I mean, I've seen it in my lifetime go from nothing to, to some, but I think it's still I don't know. It depends on your socio-economic background where you let your kids walk the streets. But
Are you saying we're not posh enough down here? Over
no,
here? All
no,
330 million of us?
I meant the other. I mean, I bet in frightening areas
Right, okay.
they don't do it so much. You
So
don't
we
know
just
who's
have
going
it
to open the
so good
door.
over here in
Yeah,
America.
exactly. Yeah, I think it's a very good time for murderers to sort of dress up and
Right.
and
Yeah, already covered with fake blood. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. The first thing I thought about in the pandemic was this is going to be great for bank robbers.
right.
Everyone wearing a mask, no one can be recognised. So yeah, we do it more and more. Yeah.
All right. Well, I will forgive any interruption. So,
Okay.
what else is going on?
Well, I've been doing my homework. I started sort of doing it more and more since we've been doing these chats. Like something I'll think of and I'll research it. But still, like even with YouTube, they whet your appetite. They don't give you the answers. They can't because it's not interactive.
Hmm.
I can't answer all the questions I'm shouting in my head. So I watched this quick little. It was like I don't know, about 10 minutes TED talk by, Yuval Noah Harari.
Yeah, yeah, he's great.
Well, he just talked about why he thought humans run the world. He said, 70,000 years ago we were an unremarkable ape with no greater impact on the world than anything else, and then now we're running it. And he said basically it's communication. Everyone guessed that we communicate, but we do it on a vast and a flexible scale. So he said there's some animals like social insects that do it, they communicate in vast numbers. They're not flexible. He
Hmm.
said like in a beehive, they've got, rigid structure. They couldn't suddenly execute the queen and make the hive a republic or a communist state, right?
Hmm.
And he said there are other animals that communicate in a sophisticated way, like wolves and chimpanzees, but only on sort of like one-on-one and family groups. And he said the big difference is we do it on a vast scale and we're flexible. We've got all these things set up the way we trust strangers. And he said it came from imagination, where we invent what he called fictional reality. Like
Hmm.
animals just do objective reality. And the example was like religion. We could say there's a God, if you give me your bananas, I'll make sure you go to heaven. He said, now that wouldn't work on a chimp. The chimp wouldn't trust us because he
Right.
goes, well, no, that's crazy. The banana is an objective reality, and we've created this. And he said, it's not only religion, though. He said, it's human rights. We made that up. He said, you cut open a person, they've got livers and hearts like everyone else, but you can't see rights. That's an agreement.
Hmm.
Law is an agreement. And he said, the biggest, most successful fictional reality of all time is money. Everyone agrees and accepts money. Some people don't agree with religion or whatever, but he said, "Now I've got this useless bit of green paper, and I go to the supermarket and I get 10 bananas." He said again, "You couldn't get a chimp to give you his bananas for a dollar bill,"
Right. Right.
and so with that in mind, I just think, well, what's next then? What's the future of that? What's the next thing that we invent and all get together and agree with? Like ants have been around for 150 million years. We haven't been around for a million years yet. So what is our evolution? Is there something beyond imagination? Is there any limit to imagination? It just blows my mind that I'd never thought of that before.
Yeah. Well, it is also interesting that an ability to conceive the future and make it emotionally salient is underpinning all of this. So even in the case of money, it's not merely that we have told ourselves a story that we find compelling, that the dirty paper in our pocket is worth something. It's a story that is predicated on a future promise to value that paper. I mean, the only reason why you'll accept paper from me is because that you have a conviction that in the future it'll be worth something. Not it's not even a
Yeah.
state about the present, right? So
No, that's
it's a
true. That's
promise
of
that is
course.
future oriented. So it's really interesting that, yeah, I mean, I do think that if other animals can conceive of the future, it's got to be in a very near term and
But
fairly vague sense.
didn't they talk about that though? Didn't we talk that they taught chimps the value of money, i.e., they realised it was part of the barter system where
Hmm.
they taught them that it could get bananas and they caught them, get the, and they invented prostitution early days.
Yeah, you cited that study that I still have not discovered. So yeah, if you ever,
Maybe it's bullshit. Maybe I've just
no,
someone
maybe
sort of
I can't say that I went searching for it, but I have not actually seen
you
the
didn't want to
study.
Google chimp prostitute. You didn't want to Google that, no?
I now really want to Google
You didn't.
nothing else,
You
but
didn't want that on your search history.
yeah.
He said a really
The
great
truth
thing
is, that's
though.
all I Googled: chimp prostitution. Yeah.
He said a really great thing that he said, because we're so unremarkable by ourselves, it's about the collective us. He said that if you were to put, me on an island with a chimp, who would survive? He said, there's no doubt the chimp would survive. If
Yeah.
you put 10 humans and 10 chimps, they'd survive. He said, but when we get to thousands, we win every time. And that is due to our communication skills and our promises and our, the fact that we can predict the future and all things like that, which is fascinating, really. But there must be, we evolved from a common ancestor. So what made imagination? What thing 70,000 years ago suddenly went ping in our head? I know it was a gradual thing, and but what was the event? What is imagination? What is different about the brain? Isn't it invention or a discovery? Or is it from nothing? Is it just something that happened with the brain that it came
Well,
from
in this
nowhere?
case, I really think it is complex language. The ability to represent various hypothetical states of the world. I mean, if you're referring to something beyond what is merely present in your immediate sensory environment, you're referring to something that is possible or past or even hypothetical. And the moment you can do that with language and you can play a language game with others where you trade in those representations, then a completely different set of capacities open to you. I mean, you can essentially run experiments in your mind with language. You can ask the question, what would happen if we did X, right? And then you can
Yeah.
talk about it, think about it, and essentially let those failed experiments fail in your imagination rather than just run them every single time. You can think of like, what if I said this? What if I did this? And you can error correct in advance insofar as you can clearly imagine
But
what's probable.
how old is some complex language?
I don't think we know. I mean, I think it's got to be something like tens of thousands of years old. It's not merely thousands. I mean, we have the literature from thousands of years, and it was every bit as complex as today, right? So you go back to Homer, and you're in the presence of the fully modern ability to
Oh, of course. Yeah,
think
of course.
about states of the world. So, but it's whether it's 75,000 years or 175,000 years, I'm not quite sure anyone has
But
a
but
strong
but
opinion
did
at this point.
imagination? But surely, imagination came before language, or we couldn't have. Am I wrong? Did we have complex thoughts without the words for them? Like we could plan futures. We could go point and go. Remember, the mammoths come at this time of day. Let's go and
Mm.
push them off the cliff before we could communicate in any way. There wouldn't have been a word for everything, would there? There wouldn't have been. There'd have been sounds,
Yeah, I mean,
but
this is a little hard to think about, but there's a kind of bootstrapping where, it's hard to know what comes first,
yeah.
but I think it is pretty clear that generally speaking, you can't have a thought about something without having the linguistic concepts for it. This doesn't cover all thought. I mean, obviously, you can have images and you can have memories that are purely imagistic.
Is that true, though?
Well, it's
Is
just, I
that
mean, just think
true?
about what it is to refer to something that you have no concept for,
So
right?
you mean outside I feel hungry? Like, would it be possible to bring up someone without language on a desert island by themselves? And are you saying they wouldn't have
That you
thought?
can have reactions, but like you can be angry without having the concept of anger. And I'm sure there are other species that are
Oh, I
effectively
see what you
angry,
mean.
like
Oh, okay.
chimpanzees. But
Yeah,
there's no way to relate to that experience or describe it or think of it in terms of anything else if you have no concept for this eruption of energy that overcomes you in certain circumstances, right? And if you think of
sure,
something more refined like resentment, if you
mm,
don't have a concept for resentment and you only have anger as a concept, like the only negative emotion you have in your lexicon is anger in this area, the interpersonally negative state of anger, but you don't have resentment, you don't have envy, you don't have jealousy, you don't have schadenfreude, you don't have any other coloration of having a bad attitude toward other people, then you really can't think about those things. You just might keep saying, well, so I'll give you perhaps we spoke about this because this example always comes to my mind, but I remember the day when I differentiated embarrassment from humiliation, right? I used to use those words interchangeably. They just seemed like just pure synonyms. I mean, if humiliation just seemed like a slightly stronger term for embarrassment. And they're very similar, but they have some different features. And one feature is when you tell a story, let's say you're telling a story to your friends about a time you were embarrassed, that just readily provokes laughter from your friends. You're almost guaranteed to make people laugh when you're
yeah,
telling a story of your embarrassment.
yeah.
If you tell a story about a genuine humiliation, people don't laugh. People are quick, they,
No.
they want to change the subject, they get uncomfortable.
Well, that's empathy because there's lots of things. I think you're right. I think there is a distinction, but they're both empathy. We laugh because it's with your blessing. If you came in angry about your embarrassment, I'd think he doesn't want me to laugh. Whereas
Right.
there seems to be some sort of unwritten code when you go, just guess what happened to me, right? That is. I mean, that's pure comedy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Someone telling you what a bad day they've had, but it's with their blessing. If someone told you the day they came in, they got brutally mugged.
Right, but it's not just on the person telling the story. So, for instance, if you just had a strangely calibrated sense of humiliation, right? If you told a story that you were embarrassed by, your audience found it through empathy. They put themselves in your shoes. If they would find that experience genuinely humiliating, they're still not going to laugh, even if you want them to laugh. If you tell a story that's just mortifying, but you're having fun with it,
I know
this
what you
this might
mean.
not apply to you because you're a professional comedian, but the normal person over dinner telling a story will be out of register with his audience if he's just finding it lighthearted fun and they're finding it, oh my God, I cannot believe believe what I just heard.
Yeah. And do you think so that goes beyond that sort of goes beyond empathy because we've already established the guy telling it doesn't mind it, but it's terrible. We're going, well, I couldn't take that. I can't. Empathy isn't enough because I don't want to put myself in his shoes and be okay with it. Because I know for a fact
I mean,
I wouldn't be
socially
okay with it.
socially speaking, I think there are experiences, that embarrassing experiences that make us the object of comedy for the people who witness them. But when they cross over into humiliation, they make us the object of disgust for the people who witness them. And the audiences can sense that difference. And my only point is to roll back to where we started here. My point is, unless you can distinguish conceptually between embarrassment and humiliation, this is a difference you might just not notice, right? And I didn't notice it for a long time. I mean, it was probably working in the background. I would probably have noticed the difference between having people laugh and having people get uncomfortable at a similar story. But now it's clearly delineated in my mind. And there's so many things like that where if you can't I mean, when you just look at what thought is, I mean, to think a thought about irony, or, I mean, just take, there's strange words like, well, I did it for its own sake, or, it was for Ricky's
Yeah.
sake that I hid the brownies because I knew he wasn't going to want to eat them, right?
Yes.
A word like sake, like what is a sake?
Yeah.
And where do you find one in the world?
Yes, but we're getting close. We're getting very close to metaphor and analogy now, which I think is one of the most beautiful and important concepts. I've learned, particularly when something that I can't get my head round, literally, I fire metaphors and analogies at people to so I can see it at different angles. Even things like quantum physics, which analogy and metaphor fails because sooner or later you've got to go, what is actually
Hmm.
happening, right? But I think that we get close to that in language now. That the poetry of language is what makes it interesting, not just to get back to Yuval's point is that I suppose language can be about objective reality and it can be about fictional reality. Poetry, analogy, metaphor, they're a fictional reality, aren't they? Eyes like diamonds. You know,
Right. But his point is actually deeper than that, that so-called objective reality, the real things we care about, is often born of fiction the consensual fiction that we all endorse, like money. I mean, money is real. Money, if you don't think money is real, we'll just try to live without having any, right?
yes, but it's not real in the sense that it has any worth other than our
Exactly. It's
agreement.
purely based on a story we've told ourselves that enough of us
Yeah.
find compelling.
When will that end? I mean, I thought after when I saw like at the beginning of the pandemic with people buying up everything in the store
Hmm.
and fights in the street, I thought it's not going to be long till I'm not going to have enough money to buy myself out of
Right.
marauding. I'm gonna get £1 million
Yeah.
if you leave me that apple. You
Right.
know, there comes a point where you go, "Oh, money's no good to me.
Yeah.
Money's no good to me. I just need the apple. I need the shelter. I need the." It just it would collapse, wouldn't it? Without law and fairness and honesty, money would collapse, wouldn't it? That's it. It takes all those other lies and virtual things to accept it.
Well, this is one
Because
reason why people are so excited about cryptocurrency now, Bitcoin and
right.
other cryptocurrencies. What's unusual about it is that it's trustless in a way that so-called fiat currency isn't. I mean, because fiat currency is just printed by the government, and the U.S. government can print more dollars, and they can print dollars fairly surreptitiously. So you don't even like every time the government prints more money, it's quite literally devaluing the money in your pocket, and you have
Of
no
course.
control over when they do that. Whereas with something like Bitcoin, there's a finite amount of it. I mean, the amazing thing about
But
cryptocurrencies,
how do we know that? How do we know that?
it is just a matter of computer science at this point that there's an algorithm that has enshrined this fact that I think it's 21 million Bitcoin is the final,
Sure.
that is the final number.
But we had that with gold. We knew there's a finite amount of gold and
Well, it's
people
not
tried to
finite.
make it
Yeah,
and
with
steal
gold,
it
it's not
and
finite, but it just turns out it's hard enough to get more of it that it's effectively finite. It's finite enough
how is
to
it
be
not
stable.
finite?
Well,
You
you
think
can
it's on
just,
another
there
planet or
is more
something?
gold in the world to be
Oh,
found. Yeah.
of course, but we know didn't they work out that that all the gold in the world was ored, it would fit under the Eiffel Tower. It
Yeah,
would
something like that. I mean, it is small, but like if someone, bumps into an asteroid that is just chock full of gold, we have a gold problem, right? If
sure.
provided you can get it here. I mean, there are
Yes.
these, bizarre accounts of one culture meeting another, colonizers going into Africa and discovering that their form of money was like, seashells or glass beads or whatever, something that could be easily reproduced. And then they just began to flood the market with new money and devaluing everything and buying up everything in sight before the locals could figure out what was happening. The crucial thing for money as a store of value is that you shouldn't be able to just find more of it.
Did I tell you that story about when I was a kid, the bottle top game?
No.
You know, the old-fashioned bottle tops on on an old bottle of Pepsi,
Hmm.
you know, the sort of the lovely little design, a little bit of what was it made of, brass or nickel or something. And in our school, there was a game to, you know, get the most. You know, we'd collect bottle tops for a laugh and have a burger, and then people started playing games with them, gambling with them, and flicking them up and heads or tails, you know.
Hmm.
And then me and my friend discovered if there was a game of three of us, his name was Michael, that I'd make sure that Michael's was always heads and mine was always tails, and then we'd always win because it was odd one out,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so we started winning, and that was great. And this was a funny game that we were sort of winning this game of the most bottle tops. But then I found like there was an old like a working men's club near where I lived, and I found like a bin bag full of these bottle tops, right? So I took it into school to show them all the bottle
Mm.
tops, and that was the end of the game.
Right.
I
Exactly.
think
You've proven the
yeah,
weakness of money as a store of value.
yeah.
Yeah, this is a
Well, I told you,
civilizational problem which you recapitulated entirely on your
yeah.
own.
Well, I thought that as well with like with Scrabble. Me and Jane just play Scrabble, and if one got the 9 word score first thing, it was the end of the game.
Mm.
So we were taking out sort of letters to make that sort of impossible that you didn't get the 50 points in the first go because it
Right.
that was the end of the game. But some people want the system, don't they? The bit I said to people, I've been naive all my life. I didn't realize someone invented this game just to win it. I didn't realize that, you know, billionaires got together and said, We're
We
we're
want
the
all the
chosen
bottle
one."
tops.
Yeah. Well, when will it end? Because haven't already like 1% of people got most of the money in the world?
Hmm.
But why does everyone else agree to that? Because if they didn't agree to it, that
Well,
what, you know what?
well, first of all, you are not on the losing side of this particular paradigm at the moment, even though you're
No,
quite poor compared to some billionaires we could name.
of course.
But
No, that's the other thing, isn't it? That I don't. Yeah, I'm the system's kind to me now. Yeah,
yeah,
that's very very true.
although
Yeah,
I do relish the thought of you really getting on this hobby horse and complaining about the system.
yeah. Well, that you can't, can you? That's
That's
it.
going to go over
Yeah.
well on Twitter.
I know, I know. Yeah,
Let's see if we can
you're not
start that
allowed.
meme. Yeah.
Yeah, hypocrisy is the worst thing you can be in the present climate. Yeah,
So this is a very interesting issue in America right now. I'm not sure it's landing in quite the same way in the UK, but the problem of wealth inequality, the problem of figuring out how to tax people effectively. I mean, we just, it was just disclosed that the wealthiest people in America, and on Earth, are basically paying nothing in income tax because they
yeah,
shelter all of their money. I mean, they don't take it as income, and many of them live off of loans so as not to have to pay themselves income, and they don't. So they have these unrealized gains in their growth and wealth. There are people who, I think Elon made $36 billion in one day last week.
yeah. I don't. It's. You
But
might as well be
there's no
talking
that's
quantum
not a
physics.
taxable event, right? And because obviously
Yeah,
the stock can go down next week, but the reality is, he's made more wealth than probably any person in human history in the last 12 months, and it's all untaxed. And so it is with Bezos and everyone else who's supremely wealthy. But the question is, you don't want to create a system that creates perverse incentives where you wind up causing the most wealthy people in any given society to just move because they can. I think it's true that France, based on its change in tax code, its attempt to have a wealth tax, lost, I think it was 25% of its millionaires over the course of just a handful of years. I mean, people just left France because they were avoiding the taxes, and
yeah.
that's something you have to anticipate and figure out how not to do.
But why don't people want to pay tax? Because I don't think of it. I don't think of it as my money. If I earn $10,
Mm.
I think I've earned $5.
Right.
That's how I look at it. I think, well, I'm not giving it away. It's not mine yet. This is all my.
Hmm.
I'm paying for all the safety, and I'm paying for. I'm paying to sleep at night. I'm paying to not go to jail because it's the rule. But I don't quite understand what. Why do we
Yeah.
give people the choice? Why
Well,
have we given
again,
them?
so this is great. I mean, this comes down to the power of of ideas and the power of words, right? And the power of the framings of a situation. I mean, just for you to frame it that way, just to be able to tell yourself the story, I mean, to literally think the sentences.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah,
consider it
yeah.
my money yet. If I make $10, I consider that, $5 having been made. People have very different ideas around this. And for instance, it's very common in America for people to literally equate taxation with theft,
Yeah.
right? It's like the government is coming in and at the point of the barrel of a gun is taking half of my money, which I earned, right?
Yeah.
That's the so and that's a very different story to tell yourself, and it has predictable consequences.
Yeah, there's a I think it's the North, sort of Midwest, where they don't don't pay land tax. They think it's their right not to do it, and the FBI let them off because they don't want a war.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of people saying, "Well, I'm going to buy land then and not pay tax," and it never happened. But they let them off because they say, "I'm opting out." And it's funny, isn't it, that if everyone did that, there would be a problem. And that's what that this this guy, this Yuval, was saying, that it only works because we all agree. Money only works because we all agree. Even the people without any, they agree. Because when I remember when Obama was going to bring in that very, very mild form of welfare state that we've got here,
Hmm.
and nobody wanted to say it's not fair, and they interviewed like the poorest people in America, and they didn't want it, and people said, but it'll benefit you, and they said, not when we're rich, it won't.
Right. Yeah.
And
Well,
that's a very real idea, isn't it? The American dream, that play the system and you will win it. It's a lottery, isn't it? It
yeah,
is a
I do
lottery.
find it amazing how little appetite there is to tax even supremely wealthy people because it seems confiscatory in some way, even
Yeah.
from people who, I mean, yeah. I mean, part of the rationale here is that it's got to be true that many people imagine that they may one day be in the position of being very wealthy and they wouldn't want to be taxed in that way.
But I get that, but it's ridiculous because one of our chancellors once, he came back, and it was one of these big internet conglomerates, right? That was worth billions and billions, and he negotiated a 5% tax deal, and everyone was pleased with that because they were playing naught. I want to go. It's 45%. Why are we why are we applauding him for getting 5% out of them? I
Mm.
pay 45. Why don't these? It seems odd. It's blatant. Everyone knows this. Everyone knows this. And yet we go, yeah, what can you do? We just accept it because I think it's an easy life, isn't it? I think it's unfathomable. I don't think people can quite understand the amount of money there is in the world. They
Hmm.
don't quite understand the amount of money they haven't got,
Yeah.
because it's mind blowing. And like, on a really small scale, when I started earning for the first time, I was sort of, I really want to pay my taxes. I told my accountant, I said, I'd rather pay too much tax than not enough, for lots of reasons: to sleep at night, to not be lumped in with those people who don't, and all that. And I also sort of was careful at what I did because I thought, oh, I've got integrity. And I was offered, quite recently, a few years, I was offered by my like PR people and agents in America, this thing where someone gives you 20 grand to just do a tweet and say, "Oh, I love this
Hmm.
chocolate bar, hashtag." And I went, "No, I'm not doing that." Right. And now I think I should do it and give the money to charity.
Right.
And I think that's integrity too, in a way, because integrity is relative to you, isn't it? Like, we can all be all liberal elite and go, "Oh, I'd never do that. It's beneath me artistically." But a guy who works down a mine 7 days a week to pay his kids, he hates that job, but he can't go, "It's beneath me."
Mm.
That's integrity. That's real. That's actually doing something. So, how do you feel about that? That when we have choices and money, that what's the right thing to do? I mean, is even the right thing to do to give it all away? Because to who? Why didn't
Mm.
you give it to that person? It's a never-ending conundrum for everyone to have enough.
Yeah. Well, I think it is solvable. I mean, so, for instance, the philanthropy piece is. can certainly be optimized from my point of view. I mean, I'm taken with this new movement, which I think we've talked about at some point, called effective altruism, where people really they step out of the sentimentality around how various causes make us feel and really just try to
Mm,
analyze what is going to mitigate human and animal suffering as much as
right.
possible. And also, they spend a lot of time focused on long term risk, right? So if you're running a 1% risk of literally destroying the future, well, then that's worth, you know, mitigating, right? So, like, what's the most effective way to deal with what things that really could end the whole human experiment? And I think, they recommend various things that are counterintuitive to people because, some people say, well, I could be working for a hedge fund and doing this soulless work of just making as much money as possible, but I would rather be doing something more noble, and working for, at an animal shelter, say. But, an effective altruist would say, listen, if you are in a position to work at a hedge fund and make, tens of millions of
Yeah,
dollars or hundreds of
yeah,
millions of dollars, you should do that. That's almost certainly the best use of your time. And then you use those resources to solve real problems in the world. And here's the list of charities that will take your millions of dollars and so it's called, earning to give under this framing. So there are many people doing that. I mean, this one, I'm about to have a conversation with, I think he's the richest person ever under the age of 30. He's a cryptocurrency billionaire. I mean, he's just made, I think, $29 billion in the last few years. But he's made it explicitly for the purpose of giving it all away. I mean, that's why he's kind of out of the closet as an effective altruist.
wow. I mean,
And
that is amazing,
it's
that
just
is
very
amazing.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can't have an argument with that, can you really? But it's that thing, that payback, that like smoking. Well, smoking is terrible. It's a terrible thing, isn't it? It kills people. It's awful. But they pay so much tax that you say, well, it pays for the people. Now, I'm still torn over stuff like that. I'm still torn over that. Things that do incredible harm, but help other people. I
Well,
don't
there are
know how you.
trade-offs. I mean, I think in the case of smoking, it's probably the taxes are probably just paying for the negative consequences of smoking. But
Yeah,
so there are better ways to raise money for other public goods. But there is just it is a fallacy. I mean, the thing you don't want to. I mean, clearly communism does not work as an economic system, right? It's been tried multiple times, and it leads to catastrophe. So there's something capitalism and the apparently mutually selfish search for profit is the best system we've got, but it's clearly
it
a
is.
flawed system. But we
Yeah.
really do have to be careful
Well, it's a
not
pipe
to
dream, though,
jigger with
isn't
it
it?
so much that it
No.
loses its capacity to inspire as much creativity and productive
Well,
work as it can.
and and nothing can be imposed because obviously the ideal society would be somewhere where everyone does what they want and has enough that they want and shares everything for people
Yeah,
who don't. That's the ideal society. That's what we'd if but it breaks down when someone says, "I'm not sharing mine. I I work to it. I'm not sharing mine." It's
yeah.
like it does take everyone in on it. There's
I mean,
resentment,
the thing you
fairness.
run into, I get into these conversations a lot with fairly wealthy people. I mean, it's something that it's a topic I keep revisiting on my podcast. The thing you often find among the wealthy that justifies their, what to our eyes, a lack of commitment to the common good. The main reason why they're against paying taxes is they think the money is invariably or almost invariably misspent, right? It can be spent better by the private sector, right? So, and they give something to charity. I mean, it's not that
Well,
all these
yeah.
people are
I'm not sure I believe.
misers, but in
Yeah.
proportion to the wealth they actually have, it's almost nothing. It's a rounding error on a rounding error. I mean, if you have $200 billion and you give $50 million to a cause, it's almost like giving nothing, right? I mean, it's like you could lose $50 million in your couch cushions and not notice it if you have that much money.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're right. Everything gets soaked up. It's there's huge problems. I mean, just when you think of the climate problems of 2 billion farm animals a day slaughtered. Now that's a no, no. There's no money going to change that. It's attitude. It's
Mm.
attitude at a roots level, and everyone agreeing that, well, let's not eat meat anymore, and then it's done. That problem solved. But just an impossible, just an uphill. Although I think it's going to happen naturally, because I assume the younger generation are a lot more vegan.
Mm.
I remember when I thought vegans were crazy people.
Hmm.
Like when I was a kid, I thought a vegan was a crazy person
Well,
because of the
well,
propaganda
well.
around them.
In your defense, a few of them are crazy. I've heard I've heard from a few crazy vegans.
Well, yeah, but you know what I mean, though.
Yes.
And now,
Yeah.
and now, I have vegan burgers from McDonald's and Burger King,
Yeah.
the most capitalist meat consumers in the world. But they go, yeah, it's fine, because it's a strange thing that this veganism is like against all your biology. Well, everyone, even people who eat meat, mostly eat plants. We're
Mm.
just saying, just lose that last bit of meat. But it's all about attitudes. It's all about attitudes, propaganda, education on a roots level, and things change. And you're right. Billions of dollars don't really change
Well,
much.
but actually,
It's just if
this is a case where technology and significant investment may actually be the thing that gets us out of the unhappy valley here. It's like without the massive amount of profit seeking and innovation in this area, I mean, veganism would be effectively impossible, right? And I think it's going to become more and more possible and palatable. And if we get to a world where everyone is just as happy with the Impossible Burger over
yeah,
over an actual cow burger,
yeah,
that's going to be a lot of money went into that. And I don't
yeah.
know,
Well, but
I
if
can't remember if we've spoken
people,
about this, but there's also this parallel project of cultured meat where you take the animal out of the equation, but it is in fact real meat. It's just
yeah,
grown in vats.
yeah, that just I think that it's not a moral issue with me there. There's just something a little bit irrationally creepy
Right.
about it. That it's like
It is irrational. I mean, it's fascinating to me. This is such a common intuition. If you say, "I'm going to give you a burger here that's made of beef," okay, that's the normal default. That's great. But I say, not, but actually, this is beef that it was just a single cell taken from an otherwise totally happy
yeah,
and unmolested animal, and it was grown up in a vat under entirely antiseptic conditions by people, and there's people in white lab coats tending to this project, and now we've delivered you a burger that is indistinguishable from the normal one. There's kind of an ick factor here where people find
yeah,
it creepy, but essentially they're saying if you could just add back all the blood and chaos and horror of the abattoir, then I'd feel more comfortable.
yes. But I'm from the other side of you, that I know it's a good thing and much better than all
You,
the
you,
blood and
you just
everything.
don't want
But I
the
still
actual
think it's like
biological.
it's strange
Yeah,
that it's meat. But
yeah,
I would get over that if that was I would know that morally it was ethically it was absolutely fine, and it's no different to any other sort of protein, and there's been no cruelty. Then
right.
I could, as long as my brain knew that, because I eat a vegan burger and I think that's so realistic, and I have to check because it gives me the
The
creeps.
truth is, some of them are too realistic. I actually prefer the ones that are not truly simulating
I know what you mean.
real
I do
burgers.
know what you mean.
Yeah.
I know,
I mean,
but
when
I
the
mean,
beet juice when they have the beet juice coming out as fake
yeah.
blood, that is I find that kind of disgusting.
The Beyond Meat burger is I mean, I have to keep checking it. They've got, like, little bits of, like, gristle,
Right.
and I
Yes.
just think, gee, but the thing is, if you're a hardcore carnivore and you go, "I like my steak," right? The one thing you could start on is hot dogs and beef burgers,
Yeah.
because you're tasting the you're tasting the ketchup and the onions and the
Yeah.
bread.
No, they're very
There's
good.
nothing, you know so that's very interesting, that the fact that everything is a structured fictional reality that we're all in on, that all the things that work we all agree with, even if we oppose it, we have to be part of it. He said this great thing. He said that even Bin Laden, who hated America, everything it stood for, wanted to destroy it, like the American dollar. He was into that.
Hmm.
He
Right.
liked the
Yeah.
idea of that. So we you can't get out of the system. You have to go and live in the woods if you want to opt out, don't you? You can't. That's the other problem. With the structure is you can't live without a bank account. I'd have to have piles of money in a bin. Do you know what I mean? It's like we have no real. choice. All you can do is be the most ethical you can and sleep at night and then die, I think is my advice. Just it's one final thing,
Mm,
right? This thing that he said about on a desert island, right, with you and a chimp who's gonna survive better. Can
uh,
I can I negotiate with the chimp? Can
how
I
much
join
money? How much
forces?
money do I have?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm dropped there. I'm dropped there. So let's start with me. I would do you. I'm dropped there with a chimp. I got nothing.
Mm,
We're both naked, although that's not fair because it's
that's not
hairy.
going to end well. You
I've
do.
got pants on. I've got pants on, right?
The first thing I would buy with all my money is a pair of pants.
Yeah, I've got little furry pants, right? And he looks at me, right? And he could rip me apart. He can. I assume there's dangers. We've got to find food, but
Mm,
we won't oppose each other because you know
yeah.
I'm not going to be in competition with him. But could I go? Could I negotiate with him? Like if when he runs up the coconut tree, can I go? Give us one. Can I? If I'm allowed, why couldn't we? Why couldn't I make friends with a chimp? See, I could.
I don't know.
I
This is
like the
where
idea.
I think you're going to be cured of your veganism pretty quickly alone on an
No,
island with a chimp.
it's so funny that when he thought when he said, a man versus chimp, I straight away thought that it's gonna competition like who's gonna be the alpha male.
Yeah,
Of course the chimp would just run away, I'd never see it again, and I'd be dead in a week.
right.
But I like the idea of
Yeah,
me trying to
or it would pull your arms off and beat you with them and then
I
run away.
know. I know. Yeah, I think it would stare and I'd go, should I put some pants on? It would just nod. He'd go, yeah, pop some pants on, Rick. Like,
Have you? I can't remember if I've mentioned this to you before or not, but have you seen what a chimp looks like without hair?
yeah.
Oh my
I
god,
mean, honestly,
they are hardcore.
it really looks like a weird. I mean, the musculature is just
Yeah, I mean,
amazing, isn't it?
they do not look especially strong with their fur, but
No,
with it, give
but
them a little alopecia and
it all
Jesus,
works,
yeah,
doesn't it? It just all work. I know,
yeah,
yeah, incredible. But then you haven't seen me with my shirt off.
it's true. Or without your fur.
I know.
I've
I
seen you.
tell you,
I've seen you in the bathtub.
I'm.
As every person on Twitter. So
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to start
uh,
shaving my back soon. So I think me and the chimp would start bonding. Now I've hit middle aged.
yeah,
He might think that I'm, I'm
it's
part
true.
chimp.
I could have sold you short there. Maybe you don't need the pants.
No, not with this. Oh god, I could make the pants out of my back hair
Right.
if I could. That's the other thing that I was thinking that the chimp can run up a tree and get away from a lion, but he can't build a fence like me. And then I thought, Rick, you can't build a fence.
That's right.
A carpenter could if I was but I go, no, Rick, you can build that fence to save your life. I remember once I built some shelves out of 3 bits of wood I found
Hmm.
when we had no money and I lived in that little bed set. I thought I need to build some shelves. So I got 3 planks of wood I found in a skip, right? And I made sort of like a C, I put 2 bits of wood on vertically and
Hmm.
put one across it like that and sort of nailed it. And I put that against the wall. And of course, it immediately leant to one side like a parallelogram
Right.
because
Right.
that's not how you make a shelf. And so what I did was I put another little nail in one side, tied a bit of string to it, pulled the string to straighten it up, and put a nail in the wall. So I basically, it was like a fucking art project. Jane came home and looked at it, and I went, I didn't know how to do it. I think she just went, "Oh right." Like it must have it must have been like coming home to a toddler
Right.
every day.
Yeah.
What's he done to the flat?
Mm.
Oh dear.
Well, this
Yeah,
is
I would definitely wouldn't survive. The chimp would just walk away and go, "You're on your own, mate."
yeah.
Oh,
This is what you got to. You have a big pile of money standing between you and the state of nature, where your lack of skills are going
I
to
know.
kill
I
you
want to.
and Jane.
I want all my money to go to chimps.
Yeah.
If they use it well, I'd happily leave all my money to chimps. See, and just go do what you want. Let's see what happens. Oh, good.
Until next time. Great to hear your voice.
Yeah, lovely. Speak to you later.